Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to another episode of The Reclamation. I am Paula Collins, your Magdalene priestess, intuitive sound healer, Reiki master, and spiritual guide. And today's episode might stir something deep within you, something raw, something powerful. Something that has perhaps been silenced for far too long. Because today we're going to talk about sacred rage. The truth of it, the beauty of it, and the necessity of it. Because sacred rage is the fire of the divine feminine that lives inside of each and every one of us. No matter what. You know, for generations, women have been told to be quiet. We've been told to be nice, to be good, and to be pleasing. We've been taught to suppress our emotions and to make ourselves smaller just so everybody else can feel comfortable. Does it sound familiar to you? Does it sound like something that has been a part of your life for too long? Or maybe you're still living there. But this suppression, this silencing, it has a cost. It becomes this pressure in our chest or this ache in our throat, or the tears that we never cry, or the words that we swallow down. And eventually, that energy builds until it becomes something else, a deep, sacred, and righteous rage. Is any of this starting to sit with you? Is any of this bringing up something within you? Can you feel any of it? Do you feel this deep sacred rage that's been welling up inside of you in some part of your life? Think about that for just a moment. But before we get started and really dive into this, I want to make a couple of distinctions very clear. And briefly, I want to talk about the difference between destructive anger and sacred rage. Destructive anger lashes out. It seeks to harm, to dominate, to wound. It's reactive, it's unconscious, and often born of pain that we haven't processed. That's destructive anger. We see that play out so often in our relationships, in the world around us. We see how people strike out against each other in effect to right the wrong, to get the eye for the eye, right? People lashing out without thinking first, without taking time to sit with this anger that's deep inside of them. They just lash out. And I get it, totally understand it. There are so many things to be angry about right now when we look at our world. If we're not even speaking solely about ourselves, if we just look at the world around us at this time of this recording in November of 2025, we see so much that causes us pain and discomfort and sadness and sorrow. But if we don't take the time to really sit with it, we become reactive. And then there is sacred rage. And sacred rage is holy fire. Sacred rage doesn't seek to harm or dominate or wound somebody else. Sacred rage is not chaotic destruction. Sacred rage is divine recalibration. And think about that for a moment. If we think about just social justice for a moment, and we think about the wrongs that are happening in the world around us, instead of reacting to it and getting so angry and bent out of shape and looking to get that eye for an eye, if we sit and take a moment to think about it, then through our clarity, we can respond. Sacred rage arises from a deep truth that lives within each person. Sacred rage says, you know what, this is enough, or no more of this. It looks at the circumstance or the situation and it says, this is not love, and I will no longer allow it to continue. And if we think about people who took sacred rage and did something constructive with it, we can see the suffragette. Right? Those who stood up for women's rights, they didn't pull out guns and knives and beat people up. They used their authentic divine voice to speak out against all of the things that were holding women captive. And I think we see that coming alive again. I think about civil rights leaders. And the first one, of course, that comes to mind is Martin Luther King Jr. He stood up and he spoke about what his dream was for the Black community. He didn't incite the people to violence. Some of that happened all on their own, especially after his assassination. But he spoke about what he wanted in the world for dark-skinned individuals. He said, you know what? No more. No more. I think of Jane Goodall. Oh my gosh, I admire this woman so much because she saw what was happening up on the mountain in Africa with the gorillas and other animals. It wasn't just the gorillas, but and other animals. And she said, no more, enough. We cannot allow this to continue any longer. And she spoke up, she spoke out, she talked about, this is what we can do to change. I think about the people standing up for our planet right now and saying, enough, no more. This is not love. I will no longer allow it to continue. Let's get rid of the ugly chemicals that are destroying this beautiful earth. Let's move things back in a different way. Let's stop chopping down all of the trees. Let's stop all of the chemicals that are killing honeybees. which without those pollinators, we cease to exist, right? These are people who stood up to injustice and said, I may tremble, but I will not be silent. I will not be silent. And I'm sure as you're listening to this, other names will pop into your head of people who allowed this sacred rage, this holy fire, to allow divine recalibration take place within them. I could go on and on and on. I have more names popping into my head as I'm talking. And I could probably go on for hours and hours and hours about these people who keep coming forward, whose message rings true. Whose message rings true. See, our sacred rage has ancestral and generational roots. It truly does. It didn't start with us. We didn't wake up one day and say, you know what? No more of this. I'm not taking any more of this. I'm not going to do any more of this. No. See, sacred rage is something that lives in our bones, in our blood, in our lineage. And it carries the echoes of our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers and our foremothers, the women who were silenced, the women who were burned, the women who were beaten, the women who were dismissed, the women who were shamed for their power. See, this is the thing. This is the big part of it. And it's the rage of the witches, of the mothers and the healers. It's the rage of the visionary who were told their magic was dangerous. Think about that. People who were just trying to help, women and men who were just trying to help others, were told their magic was dangerous. When a little bug got in the people's ear that said, this is dangerous. And the very people who came to them for healing turned against them to save themselves. Sacred rage is the cry of the feminine rising from generations of suppression and saying, remember me, remember who you are. Remember who you are. Because we are the incarnation of those who came before us. We carry those stories. We carry the shame, the dismissal, the torture with us in our bones. And we see it play out when injustice takes place for us, for our loved ones, and the world around us. So when it surfaces, it's not a sign that we've fallen out of alignment. It's a sign that the divine feminine within each and every one of us is awakening. It's a sign that it's awakening. And it's a sign that we can do better. It's a sign that we can take time to reflect. It's a sign that says, don't react. Take a moment to think about it, journal about it, meditate on it. Find other like-minded people and rise up together in a way that shows our strength and our compassion and our deep need, our sacred need for social justice. And this fire will then call us into action. Right? So I said we would journal and we would meditate, right? And to meditate and journal on peace is great. It's a beautiful thing. I've done meditations for world peace, and they're beautiful, they're wonderful. But if that's all we're doing and the injustice continues, then it is allowed to reign unchecked. And so this sacred rage moves us from complacency into compassion in action. And notice, compassion in action. It asks us, what can I heal within me that will help heal the collective? What can I heal within me that will help heal the collective? Because believe it or not, there are small pieces within each and every one of us that is a mirror of how maybe we used to think, or maybe still occasionally think about these injustices. We may have changed our way of thinking, but it's still in there. And there are still parts of us that we need to heal. And so when we channel this fire consciously through art, through words, through prayer, through activism, it becomes a force of liberation instead of destruction. And it becomes the holy flame that burns down what no longer serves. And it creates this space for something that is true, for something that is just, for something that is whole. And so I have a couple of stories I want to share with you. I'm sure that many of you have heard of the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer, Ho'oponopono. I love Ho'oponopono. I think that it is a beautiful thing, and it allows us to lead with forgiveness first. And the man who started it, Dr. Liu, he was asked to go to a maximum security prison in Hawaii. And that's where the bad of the bad were. It was like the point of no return. And he said, I don't need to meet with anybody. They looked at him like he was crazy. And instead, he took the case files of everybody who was incarcerated and of everybody who worked there. And he went one file at a time. And he looked at all of the things that were in there about every person. Whether they were the warden, whether they were part of security, kitchen staff, janitorial, anything else that is supportive in staff in there. I don't know everything that's in a prison. And then he looked at the convicts themselves. And when he got there, the place was in shambles. Everybody was angry. Everybody hated their job who worked there. The prison itself was falling apart. It was just a bad state of affairs. But the outward signs of this prison falling apart and the peeling paint and the disruption and the constant fights and all of that was a symptom of what was going on in the hearts of everybody who was there. And so one by one, he went and he found those things in himself. The murderous tendencies within himself. The whatever was on there. And he went and he did Ho'oponopono and healed them within himself. And by the time he was finished, it changed the entire environment of this prison. People no longer came to work angry and disgruntled and hated their jobs, and they were no longer cold, and the inmates changed as well. And people wanted to now take care of this place that housed incarcerated individuals, including the inmates themselves, because he healed what was inside himself that was also a symptom of what was going on in there. And it changed everything. And I think it's a beautiful story. It's an amazing story. There was a time when I feared my own anger. I really did. I feared my anger. After my accident, after years of people pleasing and trying to fit in, I realized how disconnected I had become from my truth. And every time I chose to silence myself, I was swallowing my own fire. I was not allowing that to come out, because I didn't want anything to end in destructive anger. In fact, I avoided confrontation at all costs, and that is not easy to do when you're a high school teacher. But I chose not to allow myself to be in confrontational situations because I was too afraid that my anger would rise up and I would not know what to do with it. And one day, it came out. One day, as I was going through my healing, my anger came out. It wasn't pretty. It was messy. It was real. It was raw. It was painful. But you know what? It was mine. And my anger deserved to have the freedom to express itself. So yeah, I beat up some pillows, I screamed, I ranted, I raved. And in those moments, that sacred rage showed me where I had abandoned myself. Because I had, through the betrayal, the loneliness, the people pleasing, the looking for a way to fit in, changing who I was to fit a situation, I forgot who I was. By avoiding confrontation, I did not allow my opinions to be heard. I kept them to myself, and it was all out of fear. Isn't that why we people please and try to fit in? Isn't that why we swallow our words and we don't say them out loud? Isn't that why we do not want to be in confrontation? It's out of fear. It's out of fear of how people will see us, how people will react to us, how people will welcome us or cast us aside. But in that, we abandon the truest part of who we are. And when we do that, we forget what is real and true for us and our life and how we want to show up in this world and how we want to be in service. Because each and every one of us, when we incarnated in a way with a promise that we would be of service in some way, shape, or form. through our work, through our decisions to be married, through our decisions to bear children, through our decisions to be in relationship with anybody. We are here to be of service, not in disservice to ourselves. Because if we don't remember what we value and what we believe, what sits as our truth, we don't know how to be of service. If we don't understand our boundaries, we don't know how to be of service. And that gets difficult. That gets hard. But when I realized where I had abandoned myself through the people pleasing, through the trying to fit in, through being non-confrontational, through silencing my authentic divine voice, those were places that I had abandoned me at the core. And when I worked through it, it then allowed me to see what I truly valued. And when I finally allowed myself to feel it, to listen to it, it became the fire that burned away my shame, my guilt, and my fear of being too much. And that transmuted into my purpose, my passion for helping others reclaim their sacred power. Sure, I had social justice issues that bothered me, things that I did that I wanted to make a difference and help. But until I understood where I had abandoned myself, the way that I showed up when I went to events where we educated people on human trafficking and rape and the way domestic violence and things of that nature. When I showed up, there were parts of me that didn't come forward because I didn't want to offend anybody. I didn't want to speak all of my truth. And so I denied that. But when I made the decision that it was time to heal, to move forward, to work on where did these wounds come from? How have I nurtured the wounding so they became such a present part of my life? And how I allowed this wounding to be the script that I read from. When I looked at all of that and I went back in my life, and I went back in my story, and I went back in my timeline, and I saw where the things were, little by little, I was able to change how I saw myself and how I saw those instances. And I took the wisdom and the lessons from each one of those, and I added that to my toolbox. And I said, you know what? Okay, this happened to me, and it hurt like hell. But I can't live in the wounding anymore, because that wounding is not allowing me to show up as my authentic self, to use my authentic voice. And so I went back to each instance that came up. Obviously, the more recent things come up before the others, because there are things that we bury. But you come and you work on them as they come up, because there are things that are ready. And so I worked on that, and I worked on forgiveness of the individuals. I worked on forgiveness of myself for choices that I made that did not support my highest good. And I worked through it. And like I said, it transmuted into my purpose and my passion for helping others reclaim their sacred power. And part of that is this podcast. Because if one person hears this message and starts to embody it, they start to reclaim their sacred power. And if one person who comes to one of my moon gatherings or one of my Sabbath gatherings, or one person who takes my course or my program and they embody it to its fullest, they reclaim their sacred power. So, how do we work with sacred rage? Well, the first thing we have to do, number one, we have to acknowledge it. We don't run from it. We sit with it. We feel it in our body. Where is it causing discomfort? How is it showing up with dis-ease in our body? Because the body keeps the score. The body alchemizes all of that pain, and it sits inside of us, and it shows up in our body. So we acknowledge it. We breathe it. We allow our breath, our beautiful, sacred, divine breath, to be the alchemist. We inhale whatever the truth is. What is the truth? And we exhale the suppression, the betrayal, the abandonment, the shame, the guilt, the fear. We exhale that. We may have to do it every day for months until we truly alchemize it, because transmuting at a deep level takes time, especially when we've allowed those things to be a very real part of our life. So we have to figure out what the truth is, and we inhale that, and we exhale what no longer serves us. We may need to get up and move our bodies, right? Get up and dance. Get up and drum. Go to a drum circle. Beating on a drum is such great medicine. We may need to cry. We may need to scream into a pillow. We may need to beat up a pillow. We may need to go work out. We may need to journal. Because when we get it out from inside of us and we write it down, we are transmuting it. And we are allowing the energy to flow. We are changing how it shows up inside of us. And then we transmute it. We ask, what is this emotion showing me about what needs to change? What is this emotion showing me about what needs to change? Because when we befriend our emotions, we do not fear them, we acknowledge them. We are aware of them. They will speak very loudly about what needs to change in our life or in the world, right? It will start giving us direction. And when it gives us the direction, We then have two choices. We can create from it. We can use it as sacred fuel for our healing. We can use it as sacred fuel for our art, our leadership, our boundaries, and our truth, or we can ignore it and stay where we're at in the status quo. It's all up to us. We get to make that choice. And yes, change is scary. It's very scary. When we have allowed the emotions and the feelings to dictate how we live and how we show up and how we move through this world, it may not feel good, but at least we've known what to expect. And so sometimes it's easier to sit in that, because on the other side, when we make the decision to acknowledge it, breathe through it, move through it, transmute it, when we make those decisions and we make the decision to create something from it that can help bring about change, that can help bring awareness to it, whether it's for ourselves, our family, or the collective, we help others to rise up in their sacred rage. And we see that happening in the world. There are so many people who have said no more. And I gave you examples of the suffragettes, of MLK, of Jane Goodall. Malala comes to mind as well. If you are familiar with Malala, you know she is a Pakistani girl who deserved that all children, boys and girls, deserved education. And she stood up for that. She almost died, but she didn't back down because it was important to her. When we see people stand up for the environment and they say, no, I'm not going to accept that. When we see people stand up for their own health and say, no, I know that what you are telling me doesn't really resonate and I'm going to try something different. And think of how many times you have taken control of your health and didn't believe everything that doctors and specialists told you, and things improved. When I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, when I was 40, for many years I sat with this, oh my gosh, I'm going to be in pain every day. I'm not going to be able to do things. It's going to affect me, blah, 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 blah. And then I went to Sedona and I had my miracle take place at one of the vortexes, and I was healed from my fibromyalgia. It is non-existent in my life because I chose not to allow it to define me. There may be things in your life, in your health, that you have allowed to define you, that you have allowed to say, well, this is how it is and it's how it's going to always be. Or you can take control and say, yes, this is a part of my life. I may not be able to change it, but it doesn't have to define me. I could have done that after my car accident when I received my TBI. I could have sat there and said, oh my gosh, I have a traumatic brain injury. I'm not going to be able to remember as much. I'm not going to be able to learn as quickly. I'm not going to be able to complete, and there's so many ways I could have completed that sentence. And for a while I did, because I had to go through the grieving process. But then I made the decision, you know what? No. I had a friend that said to me, maybe your brain isn't injured. Maybe the accident healed your brain. Mind blown. And I will forever, forever be thankful for that person speaking that truth into my life. Because I looked at where my life had been to up to that point. And believe me, I was so angry. But instead of getting angry and being mad and mean and whatever it is every day and falling into that trap, I looked at where my life had been and how it had been going. And I looked at where I was after, and I looked at all the things I could no longer do. And there's quite a long list, not gonna lie. But I looked at what else I could do and how I could show up and how I could use my gifts to help others. I would have never stepped into that hadn't it been for my TBI. So where in your life do you have anger for something that has taken place? And this anger has left you feeling alone and bitter and disgruntled and frustrated. Where is that? How can you change that? How can you rewrite the script? How can you acknowledge the anger? How can you breathe into it? How can you move through it? How can you ask the emotion what it's showing you about what needs to change in your life? And then after that comes to you, and it may happen immediately, and it may take days. But then how can you use that for your healing, your art, your leadership, your boundaries, and your ultimate truth? Because your rage is not wrong, your fire is not too much, and your voice is not dangerous. It is all necessary. Sacred rage is your soul remembering its power. It's your divine no, clearing space for your most radiant yes. So you honor it, you trust it, and you allow it to lead you home to yourself. Before we close this, I have an invocation to sacred rage, to the fire that remembers. So if you are in a safe space, I invite you to gently close down your eyes and to begin to breathe deeply in through your nose, out through your mouth. And I invite you to listen to this invocation. And I will say it slowly so that if you would like to repeat after me and try to embody this even more, you can. You may also feel called to place one hand over your heart, one hand over your solar plexus, or even over your sacral chakra. But say this with me. I call upon the women who came before us, the ones whose voices were silenced, whose fire was feared, whose wisdom was buried beneath the ashes. We remember you. We carry your name on our tongues, your courage in our marrow, and your unfinished prayers in our hearts. I call upon the women who walk this earth today, the mothers, the maidens, the mystics, the rebels, the healers. You who have swallowed your truth to keep the peace. You who have dimmed your light to stay safe. You who have carried generations of pain in your body. and you called it your own. Sisters, the time of silence is over. The sacred fire is rising again. I call upon the daughters yet to come. May they never forget themselves to be loved. May they never have to choose between softness and strength. May they inherit a world where a woman's no is heard as holy, and her yes is the voice of creation itself. I call upon the elemental fire, the flame that purifies but does not destroy, the ember that glows in the belly of the earth, and the heart of every woman. Come forth now. Burn away the lies we were taught to believe, that our anger is dangerous, that our tears are weakness, that our passion is too much. Transmute it all into truth, into remembrance, into radiant power. We remember now. We are the descendants of witches who would not burn. We are the daughters of the earth and the midwives of a new world. Our rage is not destruction. It is reclamation. It is love demanding justice. It is the heartbeat of the goddess returning to form. So rise, sisters. Let your voice shake the sky. Let your feet drum upon the soil of your becoming. Let the sacred rage move through you like thunder, like prophecy, like the truth finally being spoken aloud. We remember. We rise. We burn clean. And from our holy fire, a new world is born. Take a moment to place both hands over your heart and breathe into that beautiful invocation. Allow it to become embodied in every fiber and cell of who you are. Allow it to be your wisdom. Allow it to be your battle cry. Take another deep breath in and a deep breath out. And open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me here today, listening to this about reclaiming our sacred rage, allowing that fire to burn up within us. If this message resonated with you, leave a comment. Find me on social media, on Instagram at Serene Wellness with Paula. Let me know how it moves you. Let me know how it changes you. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this, share it with a friend. Help them to become empowered. And until next time, when we meet again in this podcast, I wish you so much love, so much strength, and so much empowerment. Bye-bye for now.